Hey everyone, Defect is probably one of the better balanced characters in this game, while simultaneously being one of the strongest. I think he is still one of the most confusing characters, as was true in Spire 1, but if you're willing to put the time and effort in, he will reward you by getting you some wins. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and you learn a bit about how to play Defect. I'll see you in the next one. This character is the character I put the most amount of time into in Spire 1. So I feel like I understand what that character was trying to do here, and it largely feels like it's trying to do the same in Spire 2. But the ways you can sort of just block the game and go frost focus every run have been made very accessible, and the stuff that punishes that sort of play style is no longer in the game. So the main problem for Defect in Spire 1 was Act 4. Mostly because if you're trying to play a bunch of expensive powers, or just play powers in general, or deploy orbs that stick around, which essentially are kind of like powers, the thing that's hardest is the early parts of the fight. And Spire 1 has things that hit you on turn 2 for your entire health bar. Literally max HP will straight up kill you. Spire 2 does not have that. And I think that's leading to a lot of similar play amongst Spire 1 and Spire 2. I don't necessarily think that's a problem. I don't think there's an issue with Defect primarily blocking and scaling in a similar way, but I do think the game should try to punish you in a more aggressive manner, I will say. It feels like there's little to no reason to go for some of the other stuff in Defect's card pool, but I don't think it's unpickable in the same way that a lot of stuff is unpickable in Spire 1. So for that reason, I think Defect is actually one of the better designed characters in the game. I just think the game doesn't punish you. So Defect overall is probably second or third strongest. If I had to guess, his character feels really good to play, which in Spire 1 it doesn't. So that's a welcome change. I think I was pleasantly surprised by the design of the character and how they fixed a lot of his problems, but in fixing a lot of his problems, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of ways that he dies with good play. In a lot of testing runs, I'm obviously not like playing super slowly. If I'm going for like a world record streak or something, the runtime is going to look like 2 or 3 times longer. So I realize that even though it may look like I'm going to die or something, it's probably just because I played bad lines due to time constraints while testing. It's probably better just to test by playing a lot of runs than playing less runs well. So yeah, I think I got what I needed out of testing, but Defect feels really, really good in this game. We'll go ahead and just start with cards and get on with it. Okay, Adaptive Strike, 2 energy, deal 18 damage, add a 0 energy copy of this card into your discard pile. This feels like really slow boss scaling to me and doesn't feel like something I really want to be doing. So I can imagine if you get this in early game, the number is just big. And obviously it will add big number damage cards into your discard pile. So early game card, after early game, definitely not something you want, but I'm going to throw it into B tier here. Just because Act 1, again, is like the hardest thing for every character. I do actually think Defect Act 1 is quite good. A lot of the passive output from orbs is very powerful in this game. Just at like making one frost orb block all the hallways in the elites or something, you know, that seems pretty easy to do in this game. Okay, all for 1, 2 energy, deal 10 damage, put all 0 energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. This is unchanged from Spire 1. Unfortunately, I think this is going in C tier. There are more things that interact to make cards cost 0, and this is everyone's favorite thing to do. We all know the claw memes. But building a 0 cost card archetype opens Defect into this draw order reliance problem where you need to draw your 0 cost cards before this thing. You also need card draw with your 0 cost stuff. Overloading a lot of 0 cost cards together is just not a good thing because then you float energy, and 0 cost cards generally do not have stronger effects than cards that cost energy. The power comes from being able to play a lot of them, but by adding a lot of them, you make it so you can't draw them consistently and draw a lot consistently. So that already is sort of a problem with this sort of playstyle. The cards kind of need to be overstated to do the thing, but if they're overstated, if you're not fully going for this build or archetype or whatever, the cards are just going to be good. and you could just pick them while trying to do the easier thing to do, which is the other strategies. So there's this sort of paradox I think that exists with zero cost cards on Defect. I'm not sure how to address that, but this is definitely a fan favorite, like one of the more fun things to do in the game. One of the main reasons why All for One was good in the previous game is if you have Snecko Eye, randomizing the cost of your cards to 0, but that just doesn't happen in this game nearly as frequently. There's like a fake merchant Snecko. I'm not even sure Snecko's in the game outside of that, but yeah, I haven't seen that, and doubt it comes up very often for this to be like worth speculating about. Okay, Ball Lightning, deal 7 damage, channel 1 lightning, 1 energy. I think this is worse than the first game, to be honest. This used to be like one of the best damage commons. However, I think that there is less reason to rush damage in this game when the hallways don't really try to kill you all that much. So you can sort of just block, and for that reason, we're going to throw this into B tier. It's definitely high B tier, maybe low A. I would potentially bump it up later. Early Act 1, this is going to be insanely good, but very shortly it falls off. There's lots of other cards that will block and do damage, similarly to Necrobinder cards, that I think are just going to be better served, and they play better in hallways, and if you really want a Lightning Orb, they're going to do that, while also letting you set up in posits easier. It just feels less needed than the Ball Lightning of old. Okay, Barrage, 1 energy, deal 5 damage for each channeled orb. In the original game, this was 4. This got a huge upgrade similarly to Flechettes, and I think fights go longer, so bricking this in the first cycle is not as bad. It also is an actual late game scaling damage option, where I think in Spire 1 you very rarely needed this because most focus was permanent. And this game, focus is largely temporary, so I find myself wanting to pick Barrage more to solve like a boss damage problem or an elite damage problem, but it seems like it's a lot better. So obviously the number going from 4 to 5 is a huge increase, and comparison to Flechettes is really reasonable. I think I'm throwing this into A, as something that in the end game as a common card, like performs pretty well. And as something you can pick up in the early game now with very little problems. The other thing is that the context of Barrage being bad in Spire 1 was around boss swap, which deleted your starter relic. So you no longer had a Lightning Orb. This no longer has that pitfall. You will always have that Lightning Orb unless you dual casted it away, but that is already like one draw order problem that's solved, and the potential stealing for this card goes up a lot because if you draw Zap before it, assuming you have no other orb cards in your deck, it's just going to do 10 damage, which is really, really solid. The highest ceiling is that you fill all your orb slots, or you get Capacitor, and you find a way to scale easier, and there's other cards now that add orb slots, so it feels like this is much easier to actually scale. Scales with a lot of enchantments as well, which in the context of this game means that this card can get really broken. You can give it an enchantment that scales at 5 per time it's played. You can give it like 3 extra attack damage. You can give it 2 extra attack damage, or enchants upgraded attacks deal 3 extra. All sorts of relics and cards and strength just exist in this game. There's like the relic in Act 1 from the event that gives you the sword, and that gives you 3 extra strength. I don't know. Contextually, it just seems like there's so many more things that Barrage contributes to in this game, and its niche is much more needed in this game than it was in Spire 1. So I think it's a very, very solid card. You may not want to pick it before you have any orb gen, but for the most part, you're going to be picking a lot of cards that just make orbs. Okay, Beam Cell, 3 damage, 1 vulnerable, 0 energy. I think this is in a similar spot to Spire 1. There's no pyramid, so it feels less necessary. It's a low impact draw early, where a lot of fights I can just block. I don't really feel the need to take this very often. If it comes upgraded and it upgrades to 2 vulnerable, that's obviously a lot better. People are going to want to have this with like their all for one package or whatever, but I think for the most part, a lot of your defect damage is coming from orbs and letting those orbs do passive damage or evoking them. So vulnerable is not really scaling Defect's main way of applying damage in the first place, so it's a little bit more niche than it was in the first game, and it already wasn't super good there to begin with. Pyramid was one of the main things, and Pyramid Swap in particular, to line it up with other damage cards, physical damage cards, made this a little bit better. So I think it's something you can still take early if you're really struggling, but it's just not going to be required very often. And I do think Defect still wants to build towards small decks. We will get into that later on, but I think every character in this game really benefits from having a small trimmed down deck. Removes are a lot more plentiful. There's a lot of boss options, like the ancients, that give you a lot of removes. So building a deck that will become immediately broken or game winning if you see removes is a very valid thing to hedge for in this game. Picking this doesn't really contribute to that plan, so I'm not a huge fan of it here. Okay, Bias Cognition, 1 energy, gain 4 focus. At the start of your turn, lose 1 focus. This is an ancient only card. It used to be one of the best cards in the entire game for Defect, if not the best. There's one other card that, you know, takes that spot, I think, for sure in this game. But it's definitely not one of the better cards here. You're trading a boss relic for this, and temp focus is so plentiful. The game doesn't really demand that you get set up nearly as fast, and that was what Bias Cognition it was really good at. You play this early into the fight, it lets you get set up, and it notably worked with artifact charges to negate the downside. Artifact is completely removed from this game except for enemies from what I can tell, so I don't think that it really is going to be any sort of scaling option. It's really just a front-loaded thing, and there's other ways to front-load focus in this game, even at common rarity. So I honestly feel like this is pretty bad here. I could be wrong, but I'm gonna put it in C tier. Just the context surrounding the fact that it's a boss card is very significant. Obviously the card itself is good. If this just like came and it was just its own thing, it's just front-loaded block. But fights do go pretty long, and the fact that you can never find a way, like an artifact potion, pellets, clockwork souvenir, to negate the focus down means it probably doesn't enter the deck very often. The other boss options that has to just be really bad, to be honest. I don't see myself ever really wanting to pick it in this game or needing it. You're not really desperate for focus in this game. It feels like you don't need to have focus to win. It just really makes it easier. But there's just other ways to win the end game. Even 1 focus potion in this game does a similar thing that it did in Spire 1, which is like you hold it for a boss that you can't beat normally, and 1 focus pot is going to win that fight for you. So holding a focus pot can be all the focus you need for the entire run. If you never see anything else again, it still does the thing, but there are focus cards at common now. There's 2 of them, I believe, which makes focus readily available. Yeah, Bias Cognition just doesn't feel like it's needed anymore. Yeah, How the Mighty Fallen. Boost away, gain 6 block, add a daze into your discard pile, 0 energy. This is probably meant to be something that works with the status gen package. Okay, I can't put it over Bias Cog, let's be real. The status gen package in this game. This feels like one of the harder things to pick. The number is just not big enough to really justify picking. It's like a status 0 energy card thing that opens these packages, but the card's not good enough to bridge you into these packages. So you're going to need the packages already, and I think if you already have this stuff in the packages, you're waiting for the payoffs, and the second you see the payoff, you also just don't want this anymore. It feels really strange. I think maybe if you see the power that lets you draw when you get statuses, then that is going to be something that just probably gets in the deck at that point, but the number is just not big. I've said it already, but this needs to say a higher number to really even want to enter the deck. Even if it works with synergy, delayed draw, this delayed, does not feel that good. If the number were higher, you could definitely pick this. Okay. Boot sequence, 0 energy, innate, gain 10 block, exhaust. This is unchanged from the original game for the most part. I think the number... Am I crazy? No, the number's the same, right? Yeah, boot sequence going into easy A tier. This character, like in past games, really only struggles with getting set up. Orbs, essentially, again, are something you can think of as just power. You play an orb, it sits around for the whole fight generating value, but the trade-off is that like cool-headed blocks 2 the turn you play it and not 5 like a defend. So you're gonna have to make these trade-offs pretty frequently, and that's a cool thing to have to do, I think, when you're trying to micro Defect. I think Defect is by far the hardest character to micro in Spire 1, and it's the hardest for people to learn, simultaneously being the weakest. Inspire 2, I don't necessarily know if that's true, but I think a lot of the feelings for when you should trade HP is something that you really need to consider and try to improve upon. Boot sequence makes you not have to make that decision at all. You can sort of just play boot sequence and play all your setup, and you can build decks that rely very heavily on setup to just basically win a fight and not get punished in the hallways for not having block on turn 1. Yeah, so really solid card. Probably the first one inside of Act 1, Act 2 just gets clicked. If you're already doing the thing where you're getting set up really, really fast and you don't need this, you'll probably know. If the fights are going really well and you don't want to pick this, then don't pick it. It does slow your deck down from getting set up, but the fact that it's 0 energy gets out of the deck, really, really solid. Okay. Buffer, 2 energy, prevent the next time you lose HP. This is unchanged from Spire 1. It's a power, one-time use. Pretty strong. Again, the main purpose for this card is to stop you from taking damage while you're getting set up, but this gain loses the context of Heart hitting you for 67 on the first cycle. So there's less hits that you care as much about playing this into, but it does kind of let you basically store block over turns. Like you play this one turn that maybe you're not getting hit, and it will block the next turn and let you play your powers there. I still think it goes into A tier. It's not as crazy as it was in the last game. It is really good with an upgrade. I guess it was never really crazy to begin with, but it's a good card. Like, you do take this if it's just offered to you early. Against, like, the statue in Act 1, it's going to block 27. Like, there's a lot of fights in Act 1 that still hit you really hard one time. And this is just going to negate all of that damage. It's still a really, really solid one-time use block card. Okay. Bulk up, 2 energy, lose 1 orb slot, gain 2 strength, gain 2 dex. This is, I guess, reworked version of reprogram in this game to let you go for more physical damage. Instead of losing focus, you lose orb slots, which is a much more negligible downside. Sometimes it's even a positive to let you cycle your orbs more quickly. So I think this card is actually quite good, especially early game. Having extra dex is really, really strong. I think I'm going to throw this into bottom of A for now. You can really work around the downside, or sometimes it just doesn't matter at all. But playing a card that just kind of solves the early game and kills a lot of elites and kills the boss for you, quite good. It can be too slow if you're primarily doing stuff with orbs. So maybe let's bump it down to B just because it's an early game thing mostly. Once you're setting up with like Frost and Temp Focus, you probably just don't need it. And you would not want this downside as well. Okay. Capacitor, 1 energy, gain 2 orb slots. This is going straight into S. In Spire 1, this was less broken. There were other more broken ways to get orb slots. One of them still exists in this game in the form of the Shop Relic that gives you orb slots. But I think in general, just having more orb slots is more scaling in this game. The enemies do not scale as high. And in the first game, you would really need orb slots with focus that you already had. Focus was rarer and harder to get. In this game, focus is more plentiful, so having orb slots and focus together is a multiplicative effect. So these two things synergize really well together, and it feels like one capacitor, you really don't need more than that, is just enough output to sort of solve the entire game and let you actually get set up to a point where you sort of just don't take damage anymore. So in early game, it's not so easy to pick this thing, but it's pretty frequent that you're just building a deck that's going to block a lot, makes capacitor enter the deck, and you just carry your 1 or 2 bricks. One of the main concepts from Spire 1 that it was really important to understand is how many cards you can carry in the deck that don't serve a purpose yet, but will serve a purpose later. Oftentimes that number is similar to like 1 or 2. Capacitor is one of them, but quickly becomes a good card once you have other orbs. The fact that the orbs are entering the deck already, Frost orbs in particular, make it really, really solid. I could see it bumping down to A, but right now my experience has been that if I have a capacitor in the deck, one of them only, the end game output is basically solved. Okay, going down to Chaos, 1 energy, channel 1 random orb. This is unchanged from the original game. I don't really want this thing ever. Random orbs are not good. There are a lot of cards that just have generate an orb, do another thing stapled on it. The upgrade goes to 2 orbs, I believe, still. But yeah, this card is just needs a lot of buffs. There's other cards in the Defect class that got buffed from the first game. I don't know why this one wasn't. This could read channel 2 random orbs at 1 energy unupgraded and probably be just fine. But as is, pretty useless card. Almost never need to pick it. If you're super desperate to kill a boss, it can generate a dark orb for you randomly, and that can do the thing. But yeah, don't see the need. Charge battery, gain 7 block next turn, gain 1 energy. Straight into A tier. One of the premium block commons. And if you watch the Necrobinder tier list, you will know how good blocking inside of Act 1 is. So a card that blocks inside of Act 1 and never really falls off because it lets you play your powers later into the game by giving you burst energy in a game where energy is harder to come by is really, really good. The first copy, you basically just add, you will stop taking damage in hallways, it blocks elites, it blocks the boss, it blocks everything, it plays into endgame, it just never falls off really. It's just one of the best cards you can see in the early game. Yeah, kind of similar to Spire 1. This is just one of the goated block commons. Okay, chill. 0 energy, channel 1 frost for each enemy, exhaust. They changed this from Spire 1. The upgrade used to make it say innate, and now the upgrade makes it remove exhaust. I think arguably both are an upgrade. Depends. Innate could be a really strong keyword, but this is just going straight into S tier. In multi-enemy fights, this is just blocking 1,000,000 for 0 energy. Making it reusable means you can actually cycle it now. Just disgusting card. Was disgusting in the first game, even more disgusting in this game now that AoE fights are really scary. You can basically think of this as front-loaded block, because most of the time you have to pay energy to set up orbs, and now you don't. It just blocks like 4 or 6, sometimes more, with temp focus in this game. The 0 energy cost is really good here, just with a lot of the commons that actually say draw on them, and also with the fact that energy is really limited and you usually want to be playing them on power. So if you draw this on a turn with a 2 or 3 cost power, you can play both, and maybe your 0 cost like temp focus or something, or a boot sequence, and suddenly you're full blocking while also setting up for the rest of the fight. So yeah, really, really, really sick card. First copy just gets in the deck. Frost in general is just the strongest thing you can be doing on Defect for the most part. It's your entire block engine. Evoking it's really strong. Having it sit around is really strong. Just disgusting, disgusting card. Okay, Claw. Deal 3 damage. Increase the damage of all Claw cards by 2 this combat. In the first game, this was mostly just a meme card, and I don't think, unfortunately, that very much has changed. There are decks where you do pick this early to scale damage if you have like some draw, but usually you're not really picking more than 1. If you need to pick it, it's out of desperation, and it gets in the deck to maybe kill a boss really slowly, but the number on it is just not good. Claw is probably just going straight into D tier, maybe top of D tier. It does have its uses, so it does enter the deck. Maybe it can be like halfway between C or D, but it's pretty bad. It's probably better than Chaos, to be honest, but yeah, pretty bad. It's just hard to play around. I never really want this 0 cost archetype anyways. Again, I talked about the problems with 0 cost stuff earlier. It's just low impact draw. This is no different. Okay, Cold Snap. 1 energy, deal 6 damage, channel 1 Frost. Let's put this in A tier. Frost is, again, just the best orb type. Really solid early damage common. Basically just reads deal 6 damage, block 2 for the rest of the fight. That is really good. Yeah, Cold Snap, excellent card inside of Spire 1. I don't think anything's changed here. Frost seems way better in this game even. So let's just put it in A and leave it at that. Okay, Compact, 1 energy, gain 6 block, transform all status cards in your hand into fuel. There is a lot of stuff in this game that just adds status into your hand. And also inside of Act 1, there's a lot of enemies that just add status cards into your deck. This is a solid block card. I think the number on it is not great, but the effect is really, really strong. We can put this into 1, maybe top of B tier. I believe Fuel makes energy. Someone correct me if I'm wrong on this. I have not played with this yet, but I've seen people play with it, and I cannot remember if it's draw or energy, but it's one of those things. It basically just exhausts all the statuses in your hand and does something with them, but it's quite good. Okay. Compile Driver, deal 7 damage, draw 1 card for each orb you have. 1 energy. This is... Oh, it's both. Okay, cool. So I didn't misremember. Yeah, so Compile Driver, 1 energy, deal 7 damage, draw 1 card for each unique orb you have. This is probably also going in B tier as well. You do just have more orb types in this game. Glass orbs are now in the game, so this procs more frequently and does more stuff. Drawing is just kind of nice. I would never really put this into like A or S per se. Oftentimes this is really just a card that will say like draw 2 on it. And the number is not crazy high on it. It can get broken and enable some like infinite style stuff, but I think that's less likely in this game than it is in Spire 1 actually. It feels like I don't need to go infinite on this character as much, whereas in Spire 1, sometimes the only thing you got offered to you was a Meteor Strike, and you needed to find a way to convert that. They nerfed Recycle in this game, so Defect's targeted exhaust is actually worse than the other characters now for some reason. All the other characters kind of got buffs to their targeted exhaust, and Defects got nerfed. So it's a little weird. I think there's one other card that exhausts, and obviously Compact also exhausts here. But yeah, it's a little weirder. I think it's still very solid. B tier does not mean bad, I think, as I should clarify. These cards enter the deck pretty frequently, but it's often just like you'll know when this is good if you're making a bunch of different types of orbs. On floor 1, I think I'm picking like Charged Battery and Cold Snap and a lot of these things over it. Barrage, definitely not early game, but it's so strong in the end game. Okay, Consuming Shadow, channel 2 dark at the end of your turn, evoke your leftmost orb. This is a really awkward power that continues to eat away at your orbs throughout the fight. Evoking can be good, but for 2 energy, this feels kind of strange. You channel 2 dark, and then likely those 2 dark orbs are going to get channeled or immediately evoked, and it makes it feel harder to keep your orbs around. I don't think it's necessarily a bad card, it's just weird, and I don't quite fully understand when this is going to be really good to pick. It doesn't feel like it enters the deck very often right now, and I can't really see of many situations where it would. It's, yeah, if you can discount it to be free or something, or you have like some power spam thing happening, maybe. I don't know. If I transform into it, I'm not going to be unhappy, but it probably goes into C. I don't think it enters the deck very nicely at all. Okay, Cool Hints. 1 energy. At the start of your turn, gain 2 block for each unique orb you have. Going into S tier. It's really easy, like I said, to have 2 to 3 orbs in this game, orb types. Getting passive block every turn is really, really strong. This basically turns every orb you have into Frost. And that's a really, really powerful effect. So I think maybe we can drop this down to A. But yeah, really good to just have block output in this game. It's not often you really need to block more than like 20 or 30 a turn. So, you know, if you have like 3 or 4 different kinds of orbs set up, like 5 orb slots, this passive block is basically just making you unable to take damage for the rest of the fight. So it's another setup power. Defect is kind of well known for having these sorts of setup powers where once you deploy everything, you win. They did fix that a little bit in Spire 2. I think that's less true. I still have to play the fight more than I would in Spire 1, where oftentimes in Spire 1, I would get to a point where I just press end turn and the enemy dies. I think that happens a lot less in Spire 2. So I really like that decision. But I think overall, the game is not punishing enough right now for Defect to really get owned, but he feels like he's in a decent spot. Just like strong for where the game is. I probably win too much on him already for my liking, but I think Defect is in a pretty healthy spot design-wise. And yeah, upgrades to 3, I believe. Cool-Headed, 1 energy, channel 1 Frost, draw 1 card. Sorry. Going into S tier. This was a really, really strong common from Spire 1. I don't think that has changed here. Generating Frost, drawing cards. There's a lot of things that want you to line up combos and zero energy cards that do enter the deck quite frequently that we will definitely be getting to. The upgrade goes to draw 2, which makes it an insane upgrade, and there's a lot of random events that will just upgrade your cards for you. So yeah, Cool-Headed, one of the best things you can see. I think you get punished a lot less for taking an early Cool-Headed like you did in Spire 1. Gremlin Knob doesn't exist, so you don't get punished really for playing skills until Act 3 against the 3-headed like dog boss that does basically have Gremlin Knob's effect. But basically whenever I see that fight on the map, I know that I need to play around it, and I will try to hold potions or come up with a game plan. Maybe I just spend a bunch of HP to get through that fight. But yeah, Cool-Headed is just a main enabler for a lot of things. Like, it gets you set up, it draws into your setup, it does all the things you want to be doing on Defect at the same time. It's just a really, really good common card. Not broken, but very, very solid. Okay, Creative AI, 3 energy. At the start of your turn, add a random power into your hand. This is boss scaling that kills endgame fights. I think this is going into B tier. There's more stuff in this game, I think, that, you know, you're allowed to set up and scale slowly. In the old game against Heart, you really couldn't play this. Awaken 1 would punish you for trying to scale like this and play powers, but I think this can really be one of your solo boss scaling. Maybe let's bump it up to top of A, or bottom of A, sorry. Solo boss scaling to solve the run. And hallways is just not that hard to block without having like focus or capacitors. This will slowly just get you to the point where you outvalue the fight. And if you have enough front load block and enough frost orbs or whatever, just set up and you sort of block until this just solves the fight for you. Powers were just going to be pretty strong. You can see throughout this tier list what powers will do for you. Something like generating coolant, generating capacitor, generating buffers, generating, you know, bulk ups, and that's only the things we've talked about so far. There's more stuff that we have yet to get to that will be really good with this. Okay. Darkness. 1 energy, channel 1 dark, trigger the passive ability of all dark orbs. This is straight up just Darkness Plus from the first game. I think this card is insane. Dark orbs were one of the main things you would pick when you can't get 20 focus in Spire 1 to kill the enemy. If you had a very small amount of focus, dark orbs were the main way that you actually kill late game enemies. Of course, recursion has gone out of this game, so you can't keep dark orbs around, but this feels way stronger than it was in the original game. And this is just insane single target damage on a character that really doesn't seem to have that, except for a handful of cards. The upgrade triggers the passive ability of dark orbs twice. This works really well with something like Echo Form, a dupe pot, just gross card. This is going into S for me now. I think this is one of the crucial ways that you can solve endgame damage problems on Defect and elite problems. Anything that has like over 150 HP that you can't just play some attacks to kill or chip down with lightning. This is one of the main ways you're actually scaling damage throughout a fight. It is way better, like insanely so. Yeah, love darkness in this game. It feels really good to pick. I think you sort of just slam the first copy you see right now and it's going to perform really nicely. Okay, defrag. 1 focus, 1 energy. This is a power from Spire 1, was probably one of the most warping cards in the game. Upgrades to 2 focus. Defrag was made rare in this game, so you see it less often, but of course if you do see it, one of the best cards in the game. I think we just throw this straight into S. 1 focus alone is enough to outscale almost every fight in the game. In this game, you don't need like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 focus sometimes to outscale fights like you would in Spire 1. 1 focus is enough. The upgrade to 2 is definitely going to be enough. One of the only permanent sources of focus in this game now, aside from Focus Pot, I think. Disgusting card. In the context of a game where Bias Cog is no longer kind of king of focus, this is definitely the strongest focus card now. Okay, double energy. 1 energy, double your energy, exhaust. This is unchanged from Spire 1. The upgrade goes to 0 energy. So you turn 3 energy into 6. Without an upgrade, 3 into 4. Because you're paying the 1, you go to 2, and then 2 goes to 4. So essentially this makes 1 energy with a much higher ceiling. If you have other ways to generate energy on your turn, then you can double that as well and get a huge turn where you set up powers. Defect is still, I think, a character that really wants to set up in fights, again with orbs, but also powers. So having extra energy to let you play your cool-headeds, and it plays really nicely with those, is really solid. I think this is going into like bottom of A tier here. I do think energy gen in this game is good. It's really nice with cool-headed, and that's going to be in your deck all the time anyways. Okay. Echo Form, 3 energy, ethereal. The first card you play each turn is played an additional time. This lets you double powers. It lets you play anything you want twice. That is probably the best card in the class still. Maybe it's a little bit lower because of no self-repair, so you can't heal with it. But still, this is just going to solve output for like every fight that you're in. Playing the best card in your hand twice is a lot better than just what people think. If you have never played with Echo Form, I think the second you deploy it, you will realize how broken it is. If you have any other power in your deck that you want to play twice, it now doubles it. So if you can Echo Form your defrag, now you've just played 2 defrags, and then you continue to have Echo Form throughout the rest of the fight. Just a crazy card. If you don't play it in hallways, it's just worth carrying around. I talked earlier about how like you have a certain amount of bricks you can carry in your deck. This is going to brick you in early game, but in any fight where you need the scaling, you just pay your life to take the hit and play Echo Form, and you will probably not take damage for the rest of the fight. Just a crazy card. I don't think I need to go much into that anymore. Anyone that played Spire 1 knows how broken this card is. It was in contention for maybe the best card in the game. Okay. 1, Energy Surge. All players gain 2 energy. This is multiplayer. Let's not talk about it. Feral, 2 energy. The first time you play a 0 energy attack each turn, return it to your hand. Really expensive power to not do that much. This is like Echo Form, except bad, right? It only works on 0 energy attacks, which is just really strange. I'm gonna throw this in D tier. I feel like it's very often that I just don't care for this at all. There's obviously some breakable things you can do with it, and if you have a claw build going on or something, you're probably gonna be like light in the eyes on this one. It just doesn't really matter. It's just the output it provides is not enough. Doubling a 0 cost card is usually the least likely thing you want to be doing on your turn. You'd like to double the cards that cost energy, because then you can cheat the energy cost. If you want to double a 0 cost card, just add draw to your deck and redraw it. Much easier things to do. Okay. Fight through. 1 energy, gain 13 block, add 2 wounds in your discard pile. This is essentially just power through from Ironclad, move to Defect. Defect wants to set up like this in a similar way to Spire 1, but I think now in this game you care a lot more about what your redraw looks like compared to being able to just slam all of your cards and never take damage again. You still need to play cards in the redraw, which is a very good design decision, but I think it makes this card a lot worse. This is still fine in the early game and is one of the things that will open the status package on Defect. And some of those cards that synergize with this, especially the power that draws. I don't love it. It's going in B tier, but it is a solid early game block option. You probably just click it and slam it in hallways, but it's not doing as much as like a card like this would have done in Spire 1. If you had this on Defect in Spire 1, it probably gets clicked every single time you see it. But yeah, just not nearly as crazy as it would have been in that game. Okay. 2, Flak Cannon. Exhaust all your status cards. Deal 8 damage to a random enemy for each card exhausted. This does exhaust all status cards in your entire deck. Hand, discard pile, and draw pile all counted. So it can sort of cleanse your deck. I don't think you really care about it that much. Like I said, it's kind of hard to go into this like status generating archetype. If you're going into that from the start, you're just going to end up breaking yourself until you see the payoffs. So it makes it really hard for the first card to enter into the deck. You really need bridge cards that make this archetype good so you can start picking the other stuff. And I don't think they really exist in this game. I think the most reasonable one is probably Turbo, but I don't even think that's enough to really want to start having this in the deck. It can do some funny stuff. It's a cool card. I like the design of it. But I think that the status package needs something else to really get you to want to pick it. Most runs I had, I can end up ignoring that package entirely and still winning the run and just not feeling bad about it at all. I think if you end up trying to go forward and you transform into something like this, it can make those packages more playable. But again, that is always the problem. If you're relying on a transform to get into an archetype, then it probably just needs some more help. So yeah, C tier with this one. Okay. 1 energy focus strike, deal 9 damage, gain 1 focus this turn. This is going into like A tier here pretty easily. This is a common card. Really, really solid common. The upgrade goes to 11 damage, 2 focus. This is one of the temp focus cards that's newly added into Spire 2. And focus is just really strong. You just double the effectiveness of your frost charge with 2 focus. You increase your damage. So it's block and damage and physical damage, and it scales into the end game. Really, really crazy card. Honestly, like maybe we just put it right at the top. I think this is like one of the de facto commons that just enters the deck inside of Act 1, and it just never falls off. The fact that there's a lot of these kinds of cards, I think in Spire 2, more so than Spire 1, that are just good throughout the whole run, means that you do end up seeing them a lot, and they just end up in your deck a lot, and they force you, or not necessarily force you, but encourage you to play a similar looking run very frequently. Just a really, really good card. I don't have much more to say about that. We'll talk more about temp focus when we get to some other stuff, but I think this is partially one of the reasons why small decks and also caring about your draw consistency in the second cycle matters so much more than Spire 1, because you need to keep drawing into temporary focus to make your orbs function better. You still need to have draw consistency to find these things in the second cycle, so bloating your discard pile with like wounds and voids and dazes oftentimes doesn't end up being very good. Okay, FTL, 0 energy, deal 5 damage. If you have played fewer than 3 cards this turn, draw 1 card. Compare this to like some of the Ironclad cards that are similar, and you will probably see what the Ironclad cards should say. This is just one of those solid damage cards. Inside of Act 1, it just gets in the deck. There's not really any enemies that punish you. I think the one thing you really want to think about with FTL is if you have Echo Form, you probably shouldn't click it. Because doubling FTL is usually less good than doubling the card you would have drawn with FTL. You really want to be, again, not doubling 0 cost cards. You want to be doubling these cards that actually do more and you cheat the energy cost. So it is A tier, but I think you should understand when it is bad. But very often it's just free. I don't think it's enough to really make you want to lean into the 0 cost archetype. Like all for 1 FTL is just not a good enough payoff to really justify adding all for 1 to the deck, when most of the time 2 energy to deal 10 damage is just not very good. All for One's just draw order dependent, and I think this is not enough of a bridge card, but again, 0 cost cards that stand alone will just enter the deck and not bridge you to that archetype, but they will just be in the deck, especially something like this that replaces itself. Okay. Fusion, 2 energy, channel 1 plasma. This is unchanged from Spire 1. Plasma orbs just give energy passively per turn, and evoke to give actual energy. So you can get burst energy with this. You can also have passive energy. I think this is less needed in this game. The main reason why you would pick Fusion in Spire 1 is to do some infinite thing with like cool-headed recursion stuff. Recursion's not in the game. Recycle's nerfed. I think it's harder on Defect now to get into some sort of infinite where this is actually useful. It was already kind of a C tier card in that game, and I just don't think it's super good in this game. I don't think you play Fusion and it wins the fight because you're getting rid of another orb that passively would have been doing something in that fight already. Paying 2 energy for it or needing an upgrade to discount the cost of it doesn't feel very good. We're going to throw this in C tier. Can do some funny things. If you really are desperate for energy, it does stuff. There's just better ways to make energy on this character and easier ways to make energy. Usually when you want energy, you want it to play your powers and get set up. You don't really care about it having it over the course of the fight. Okay. 1 energy, genetic algorithm, gain 1 block, permanently increase its card's block by 3. Still going in S tier. It's not as good as it was in the first game, but that doesn't mean very much. Just really crazy card. Over the course of the game, this will scale into an insane number and basically full block whatever turn. It basically says you cannot take damage the turn it's played once you start getting to the end game. However, there are less uses for that. It will still just very quickly turn into a card that blocks for every hallway, and that's a very good card to have, especially on turn 1. Unfortunately, it means you cannot really take it super early very often because it oftentimes shows up at the end of Act 1. But if you see it inside of Act 1, it's going to be insane. Notably, combos with Echo Form to get double the value out of this. And this algo, because it's rare, I think comes basically pre-upgraded to generate 3 block per combat. So it's a curse for a couple fights, basically. It doesn't do very much, but after those couple fights, it turns into the best front load block card in your entire deck. And front load block on a character that really wants to just be drawing through the first cycle, exhausting all the powers, setting up, and then playing a very consistent second draw cycle is really, really strong. You can also hologram it back. We will get to that. I'm going to move on from now. Okay, Glacier, 2 energy, gain 6 block, channel 2 frost. This is nerfed from Spire 1. I don't really care. It's S tier. It loses 1 block from Spire 1. Literally, who cares? That is never why you were picking Glacier in the first place. It makes 2 frost. Do I need to say more? That's about it. It just, yeah, broken card. Okay, Glasswork, 1 energy, gain 5 block, channel 1 glass. This is one of the new orb types, and it is one of Defect's ways of getting AoE damage. Glass orbs are orbs that deal AoE damage every turn and actively evoke to deal a lot of AoE damage, with the caveat that they tick down their damage every single turn. So they will do less and less damage as they remain if you do not evoke them quickly. Luckily, it's really easy to just evoke orbs quickly in this game. You're picking all the orb cards anyways because they're already good. So it's probably going to evoke and it's going to do a lot. Even if it doesn't, it's easily just doing 7, 9, 10, whatever amounts of damage AoE, also while blocking. It's very similar to Necro's cards that do AoE Doom while blocking. So yeah, really sick card. I love Glass Orbs in this game. I'm going to throw this in A tier. It's really easy to pick in Act 1, solves a lot of those fights, and has a really high ceiling of if you evoke that Glass Orb immediately, that's a ton of AoE damage. So yeah, really easy card to pick. Also contributes to a lot of these cards that say, like, if you have different orb types, do this, like Compile Driver. There's additional ones as well. So just adding a Glass Orb and having that in your rotation of stuff that you're filling up your orb slots with is really cool. Even if it eventually means it's doing literally nothing a turn because you let it tick down. If it's just sitting there, it can be doing something just because it's a different kind of orb type. Okay, go for the eyes. 0 energy, deal 3 damage. If the enemy intends to attack, apply 1 weak. This is unchanged from the original game. Defect having weakness when your passive block numbers are really high and it costing 0 energy is very good. Again, standalone card that blocks for a lot, does a lot at 0 energy. It's just going to enter the deck. It doesn't really bridge you into the all for one 0 cost spam archetype, but it is just a good card. I'm going to throw this into A tier. This blocks hallways, it blocks elites. There's a lot of enemies where weakness is just really, really good. And this used to be Defect's only weak card. There's now another one, I believe. I think only one. But having weak on this character is just really solid. And very oftentimes you get down to a small deck that you're playing a lot of cool-headeds, you're looping this, drawing into 0 cost stuff is always good. And you have perma weak on the enemy, and it's just going to do a lot. It's an overperforming card for sure for me. basically every time I see it. I don't often feel like I need more than one copy now, and I don't want to bloat my deck with too much stuff. Again, trying to keep the deck relatively small to not slow down drawing into powers, and also not slow down future cycles. If your deck is small enough, adding duplicate copies of cards doesn't really matter because you can just redraw the one you already have. Okay, 1 Gunk Up, deal 4 damage 3 times, add a slab into your discard pile. This I think was supposed to be a common that just does a decent amount of damage and bridges you into the status archetype. Unfortunately, picking this like on floor 1 or something when you have no payoffs for adding statuses, why do I want to do this? The number's not that high compared to something like Ball Lightning that does 7 plus 3 from the Lightning Orb, and that Lightning Orb can do more over time. Just doesn't make sense. The payoff's just not good enough. This number would have to be really high to justify. If this had like 4 damage 4 times, maybe we start talking. Right now, I think this is just D tier. I don't think this ever wants to get in my deck ever. Okay. Hailstorm, power, 1 energy. At the end of your turn, if you have Frost, deal 6 damage to all enemies. This is something you're probably going to meet the condition of anyways. The fact it does it at the end of your turn means it's 6 AoE the turn you play it. That is already a pretty good effect. So yeah, the fact that you're going to have Frost anyways means that condition is basically negligible. This is just going straight into A tier, alongside Glasswork, I think. Probably a little bit lower, but again, it's just like a lot of damage over the course of the fight. And the turn you play it, it's going to do stuff. It solves a lot of the elites. And the nice thing about a lot of these cards is that you don't have to draw them in combo with stuff because they just persist through the fight. That's the nice thing about orbs, is that if you have them, they stick around. So a lot of these like other characters have to work to line up their combo cards to meet in the same hand. This you don't have to do. You just deploy an orb and it sits around the whole fight. So it eliminates a lot of the draw order consistency problems that something like Regent has, where you really need to draw your star generation before star payoffs. It's just not true here. You can deploy this first and then deploy the Frost Orb the turn after. Still will do the thing. It really just doesn't matter. Just seems like a really solid early game card and doesn't fall off very hard. The fact that it gets out of the deck when you really don't need it anymore is quite nice, just for 1 energy. So yeah, pretty solid card. I like it a lot. Okay, Helix Drill, 0 energy, deal 3 damage for each energy previously spent this turn. Really weird card. It most of the time is going to be doing 9, so I don't really understand why I need this thing. Sometimes if you just have a lot of draw, you can get payoff for it, I guess. But for the most part, you're not able to spend that much energy. It's just like, why? As a rare, I don't understand it. The number just doesn't seem big enough at all. Yeah, so Helix Drill, I think the context of it being a rare just puts it here. It's more pickable because it's kind of like Pinpoint on Silent, but like compare Pinpoint's numbers on Silent where it's 17 unupgraded for 0, and this is 9 most of the time, and it's a rare. It just doesn't make sense, right? Like the numbers just don't add up to make this like really all that great. It's like a decent early card. Like it's going to do a lot. If you see it like floor 1, of course it's just in the deck, but I don't know. I don't know why it's rare. It doesn't seem like it's good enough to justify that rare slot. And again, you're seeing it up against other rares. So we factor in opportunity cost in these tier lists. This is definitely, you know, as a standalone card, probably somewhere in A as an early game damage card, but it just, you know, doesn't seem to serve much of a purpose. I mean, click this or Echo Form. The choice is very obvious. Okay. Hello World is now an events card only, but still really good if you get it. We know how good Defect commons are, and nothing has changed there. They arguably got even better. So yeah, if you see this in the events, definitely still take it. Don't be scary. Okay, Hologram, gain 3 block, put a card from your discard pile into your hand, exhaust. Grave Blast is similar to this on Necrobinder. This is a tried and true card. People know it. People love it. Defect does actually want this effect. Putting Temp Focus into your hand is quite good. So Defect now needs draw consistency more than it did for that reason, but you still don't want to slow down your powers too much. I think I'm going to throw this into bottom of A. A lot of people will pick a ton of holograms, but oftentimes it's not doing that much unless you have something specific you need to pull back. It works really nicely with boot sequence for enemies that don't attack you turn 1. You can pull back your boot sequence. You can pull back powers you missed on old turns. You can pull back turbo and things like that to generate energy. You can pull back go for the eyes to line it up. You can pull back 0 cost stuff. some of these 0-cost things just enter the deck. And if that's the case, then, you know, this is like a decent card. But I don't think it's like as broken as people talk it up to be. I think a lot of casual players think this card is super broken. It's definitely not. It's just fine. But it can slow you down drawing into your powers. It's very often that you will just raw skip this, especially early game. So don't click this all the time. I might move it into top of B tier, to be honest. I think it's still not amazing, but can do stuff. Okay. Hotfix, 0 energy, gain 2 focus this turn. Probably the best temp focus card. This upgrades to 3 focus, but at common rarity, this is just definitely an S tier. This is just a bonkers card. This is something you would pull back with hologram, right? But because it's common, you can often just get 2 of them, and then you don't need to draw them in the right order. Yeah, Hotfix is one of those cards that you can loop if you have multiple copies of it. Playing multiple copies is great. I kind of already talked about how orbs sit around, and you don't need to draw this in the correct order. Throughout the second deck cycle, if you just have orbs deployed, Hotfix will do the thing. And that is really important, that you don't have to draw it alongside of stuff. So this just gets slammed and enters the deck immediately. The upgrade's really strong. Like 2 to 3 focus is just enough for the entire run, basically. If you make all your orbs block 5, that's just an insane effect. And at common rarity, like always having access to focus means that you usually just have orb scaling, which I think was a good design decision. I think maybe this could be tweaked a little bit. Maybe it goes from 1 to 2 focus instead of 2. But it's a very, very strong card. If you haven't played with it, definitely do. It will just perform always. Okay, Hyper Beam, deal 26 damage to all enemies, lose 3 focus. Funnily enough, I think this card is better in Spire 2. Unfortunately, you cannot negate the downside of lose 3 focus, so this essentially just needs to be played to win the fight. But there are more fights in this game that this does actually kill. I still think it's great. If you can skip it, you always want to, because it, of course, is a complete brick in any fight that's actually hard, which are all the bosses. But the hallways, this will farm Act 1. And it still does stuff inside of Act 2. So let's probably throw it at bottom of B, maybe top of C. We'll see. It's somewhere around there. I was kind of known as the Hyper Beam hater in Spire 1, so you might seem this kind of funny. But yeah, I think it's better in this game for sure. So not being super delusional about that, I think we just have to give it its rightful spot here. Okay. Ice Lance, 3 energy, deal 19 damage, channel 3 frost. One of the weirder frost generation cards. I think if you see it early, you just slam it because 3 frost is a lot. I wouldn't say this is like broken or anything. So let's throw it into bottom of A. It's a rare card, maybe top of B. But generating 3 frost is just never going to be bad. And if you have Hotfix in the deck, like oftentimes you can play it with Hotfix, that just blocks a shit ton. Notably, pushing out the orbs you already have is a good thing. So cycling this card, if you just play Ice Lance and then the next turn you play Ice Lance again, it blocks 15. Deal 19 damage, block 15 is a pretty decent turn. And that's not including any of the temp focus you can have. It's not including extra card gen with Chill. It's not including doubling this with Echo Form. It's just kind of fine. Yeah, it's like putting 3 frost into play is probably just going to be a good effect. I think it's slightly overcosted. Maybe they could maybe make it cost 2, and it would feel relatively okay for a rare. But frost is just so good that I think I would feel bad putting this in B tier, even though it seems like one of the worst ones. You'll notice all the frost cards are just above it, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, frost is just that good, and in this game even better. Okay. Ignition, multiplayer card, not gonna talk about it. Iteration, 1 energy. The first time you draw a status card each turn, draw 2 cards. I do think this is something you can sort of pick up early. And if you have this plus like power through, you know, that ends up being good, or the fight through or whatever it's called. So iteration is basically evolve tuned down a little bit. It cannot really infinitely draw cards, but it does draw 2 right away. So if you have any sort of status gen in your deck, it's already kind of just going to be worth it to make your second deck cycle going to be better. And a lot of enemies just add statuses in your deck. You can pick this against in Act 1, I think, and not actually get killed for it. Against the Frog Parasite, this can make you draw a lot of those statuses all at once, which can actually do damage to you. So it might not actually be a good thing in that fight sometimes, but I think it's something that you can speculate a little bit on. I don't think it's like insane, because I don't often want to be in this archetype anyways, but it can do funny things. Let's go ahead and throw it into B tier. It can save some of your draw cycles from getting bricked later in the game against enemies that add a lot of statuses, but it's just like, it's okay. It's pretty average card. B tier seems very fair for it. Okay, Leap, 1 energy, gain 9 block. This is going into top of B tier. Not as good as Charge Battery, even though the number's better, but gaining energy next turn for 2 block downside is just kind of worth it. The number's big. If you pick this early, it's gonna just full block most of the hallways, so it just gets in the deck on floor 1 very easily. Very strong common just to not take damage into all the hallway fights, which is something you really want to do. I think Defect needs to have HP to spend in elites. You often just block the elites and outvalue them by having Frost and Lightning Orbs tick down over time, and seems really, really strong. Okay. Lightning Rod. 1 energy, gain 4 block. At the start of the next 2 turns, channel 1 lightning. A slow block card here that makes damage over time. I picked this in a few runs, and it's felt pretty nice so far. The number's not high enough to really say it's like an exceptional card. Like if this had 6, it would be absurd. You are making sometimes a payoff to play this over defend, but it definitely feels like it belongs somewhere in top of B tier. It's just like Defect again has these like sort of block cards that just do damage over time. Maybe I can throw this into A tier, like bottom of A. Really nice. Ice Sense is literally Cold Snap, but all numbers times 3. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. You know, it's good, but I think it's harder to play sometimes, and, you know, being a rare does bump it down. But yeah, Lightning Rod, pretty solid card so far. I think it performs. It does damage against the elites while still blocking, and that's something that, you know, inside of Act 1 is really, really strong to do. It just converts energy into damage very nicely. This is kind of like Defect's Iron Wave almost, just has higher potential. Like Lightning Orbs doing passive damage again is really strong, and those Lightning Orbs all evoke for 8, so blocking while also setting up your damage for like next turn or something, and that works with your temp focus, is quite good. Okay, Loop. At the start of your turn, trigger the passive ability of your rightmost orb. This works well with focus, but unfortunately temp focus does not activate at the start of your turn. However, I do think the output required for this game is just lower than Spire 1. So still an extremely solid card. It's basically just orb slots. That's kind of how you can think about it, that the orbs don't get their passive effects at the end of the turn, but instead they get them at the beginning. So I think 1 loop can oftentimes be enough to sort of push your boss scaling, and scaling inside of hallways even, because it's only 1 energy, to a point where you just don't take damage. The upgrade's really good. It just doubles the effect, so it triggers twice. I think this is easily like top of A tier here. Maybe, yeah, it's probably just worse than Capacitor in this game, I'd assume. You often have enough orbs to fill because there's just more orb cards and more types of orbs, and doesn't go quite as high of a ceiling because Capacitor works better with temp focus, but still a really good card. It's definitely worse than Inspire 1 because you can combo with like actual permanent focus, but if you have a defrag or something, obviously the number is going to be insane. It's just you don't see defrag very often. Okay. Machine Learning. 1 energy, at the start of your turn, draw 1 additional card. I do think this is actually slightly better than Inspire 1. I care more about lining up hotfix now, and drawing alongside, you know, other cards to actually play, so I don't waste energy. It's a solid card. It's nothing crazy. You would think this would be like a really, really good card, but it is like a couple turns until it breaks drop positivity. That's not really the main thing that you want to think about with this card. The real thing is how often can you benefit from lining up combos and lining up cards in the same hand with each other. I think that's actually quite a lot in long fights. So I think we just throw this into like bottom of A tier. It's not an exceptional card, but it probably gets in the deck pretty often. Okay, Meteor Strike. Deal 24 damage, channel 3 plasma, 5 energy. This is unplayable for a large part of the run. When you can play it, it is going to generate a ton of energy and do a lot of damage. Notably, this is energy positive if you evoke the plasma. You pay 5 energy to get 6 energy back with all the plasma orbs. So it can break the game. I think, unfortunately, that feels less necessary in this game. It feels like you're not really doing Meteor Strike Infinite stuff compared to Spire 1. So I think I'm going to lower this a bit. This is an easy S tier card. I think this is probably like top of B here. It feels like I can't play it as often, and the payoff for actually playing it is worse. It's very possible I haven't just had a run yet where I go infinite with this, because it's still, again, if you exhaust your whole deck and play Meteor Strike Cool-Headed, is infinite. If you have 2 Cool-Headeds and you just go Meteor Strike Cool-Headed over and over, that is going to win the run. So there's going to be runs where Meteor Strike's going to be really broken, but I think it's like not something you really speculate on in the same way that you would speculate Inspire 1. On top of the fact that Snecko Eye is not really as common anymore, you can't hedge for that. Meteor Strike was often a card worth carrying around, and it would brick you, but if you could play it, it wins the run for you, and that doesn't feel as true, and feels like you need less to win in this game than you did in Spire 1. Okay, modded. 0 energy, gain 1 orb slot, draw 1 card, increase this card's energy cost by 1. Crazy card. Straight into S tier, free orb slot, replace itself, and scales throughout the rest of the fight if you really want to play it. Just disgusting card. There's basically no downside to taking this. More orb slots, again, can be a downside if you want to like evoke a dark orb or something, or evoke glass orbs, but like, wow, that is ridiculous. Okay. 1 momentum strike, deal 10 damage, reduce this card's cost to 0. This is basically streamlined but like condensed together. So the number on it's pretty respectable, and it's something you can loop throughout the fight. So decent early game common. It's just going in B tier here. I don't think it's anything exceptional, but if you need damage, you can pick it. That's about it. Okay. Multicast, X energy, evoke your rightmost orb X times. This mostly works with dark orbs. My general feeling is that there's less need to really have a mega dark orb that you one-shot a boss with. It feels like you can stabilize most fights, but it can do something. Obviously, if you have Chemex, it's going to be doing a lot. In general, energy is harder to combine in this game, and that's where multicast is really going to shine. It can just be kind of worse dual cast, and also just like not having focus means that evoking frost orbs multiple times doesn't even block for as much as in the previous game. So this is probably C tier for me. It can do stuff. It's definitely not a never pick, but it doesn't feel like it wants to enter the deck very much. Okay. Null, 2 energy, deal 10 damage, apply 2 weak, channel 1 dark. The other weakness card on Defect. It's going into A tier. Weakness is just really good. Channeling a dark is a really good effect. It kills bosses. Just doesn't really fall off, deals very respectable damage. Let's just throw it up here next to charge battery or something. Yeah, seems like a really, really solid card. It like basically you can read this as deal 10 damage, block variable amounts, and win the fight as it goes on longer. So it just does a lot of stuff. It's very cool. Okay, Overclock. Draw 2 cards, add a burn into your discard pile, 0 energy. This upgrades to draw 3. Unchanged from Spire 1, but I think that the playstyle in this game is a lot less reliant on just drawing and setting up all your powers in this game as it was in Spire 1, and you need to go a lot less fast. So the burn downside is real because it will brick you in your future draw cycles, which, as we talked about, is something you need to still have. You need consistency into drawing into your hotfix. So if you have a deck, basically the situation for this is if you have like a bunch of defrags or something, and you can play those to win the fight and get set up, and you don't care about future draw consistency, it gets in the deck instantly. If you care about your second draw cycle, then you definitely need to think about it. It's probably C tier for me. It can definitely do stuff, but again, I think the context of having like aggregate overclock into play all your powers in Spire 1 just doesn't exist anymore in this game. It's not as crazy. Okay. Quadcast. This is an ancient only card. 1 energy, evoke your rightmost orb 4 times. Obviously the number on this is really insane. I believe this is the dual cast upgrade, correct me if I'm wrong, and probably upgrades to 0 energy, but I have not had it. The number on this thing is really, really crazy. It's just a lot of damage. This would be like one of the main ways you can just one-shot a boss with a Dark Orb, but I think the more useful thing is that it's going to just block 20 when you evoke a Frost Orb, and maybe more. So something you could end up looping to have like an endgame block plan, and it's just really, really, really solid. Okay, yeah, Quadcast probably in A tier. Okay. Rainbow, 2 energy, channel 1 lightning, channel 1 frost, channel 1 dark, exhaust. This is unchanged from Spire 1. It's not really an exceptional card, but again, if you need a dark orb, then it's going to do something. Probably just goes into C tier. It kind of does nothing well, but does everything at once. It's just jack of all trades card, a little bit awkward to play. I'm going to read this comment because I think it is relevant to this discussion, and I'll answer it. I think this tier is inconsistent in comparison with the other one. Overclock, Compact Turbo is an instant win against everything. Glow Alignment got S tier for the exact same thing. Okay, Alignment was not an S tier in my tier list because I think it was hard to pick. And I think that is still true for that case as well as the stuff in the Defect Infinite. Basically, Compact is not something every deck wants. Overclock is not something that every deck wants. So the pieces don't enter the deck as frequently to assemble this. If you can force it, it's going to do it, but it's just not actually that good. If Overclock is in every single deck, then maybe that's extremely different because it makes the other things surrounding it more viable. But having that all altogether is just not going to happen as often because the individual pieces are not as good. And yeah, I still stand by alignment being C tier. I think it's not as crazy of a card as people say it is. It goes infinite really easily, but you often just don't need to, and it's impossible to pick early game. It's completely unplayable. Yeah, and Defect is really bad at exhausting the deck, so oftentimes doesn't get down to an infinite loop in the same way. Okay, reboot, 0 energy, shuffle all your cards into your draw pile, draw 4 cards, exhaust. This is unchanged from Spire 1. Does very similar things, and you're less often adding stuff like Turbo Overclock into your deck, and you less often care about drawing into powers in this game. So it is slightly improved. I think this still upgrades to 6 draw, but it's a rare. It's not doing anything crazy as a rare. Can definitely still do stuff. I'm going to put it into like bottom of B. If you see it in your first hand, you have a really bad draw order, or you want to just draw into a hot fix, you can just slam it. There's more things at 0 energy that you care about playing in this game, so definitely better, but not an exceptional card. If you're trying to draw into your Echo form, you don't want to play Reboot. You really don't. So notably, if you have a power you're really trying to draw into, or you have one core card that you're trying to get to, Reboot probably shouldn't enter the deck, because it just makes this draw order consistency problem where if you play it, you might end up further away from that core power that you're trying to get into. Okay. Rebound is events only now. Let's not talk about it. Refract, 3 energy, deal 9 damage twice, channel 2 glass. Pretty strange card. It's like single target damage, but also AoE, but then leaves you no energy to actually block with. I don't think it really ends the fight immediately. So pretty clunky and awkward card. I don't think I really want to take this very often. I think this is like bottom of C. I can definitely see where this would be a thing, or if you're really desperate for damage, it does stuff, but it doesn't feel like it is going to enter the deck almost ever. Rip and Tear, 1 energy, deal 7 damage to a random enemy twice. This is unchanged from Spire 1, still just as bad as it was. Let's just throw this in D tier. Really just inconsistent damage numbers. In AoE fights, you want to pick where your damage goes. You do not want to have this random targeting. Just quite strange. Okay. Rocket Punch, 2 energy, deal 13 damage, draw 1 card. This upgrades to, I think, 14, draw 2. When a status card is created, reduce this card's cost to 0 this turn. If you are in some sort of status creation thing, if you have Turbo, for example, this could be good. And if you have like draw, like skims line up your Rocket Punch together with it, it can just be draw for free. Can go infinite pretty easily, so I definitely see how this gets in the deck. The damage number is pretty solid on it. So I think you can click this early game. I don't think it's an exceptional card, but I'm going to throw this into bottom of B tier. This sometimes just enters because you have Turbo and draw, and in that case, it's probably going to play pretty nicely. That's about it. It can do some funny stuff. There's like things that go infinite with this. The fact that it's 0 cost draw for the entire turn means that it will enable infinite stuff. And I think if you can read this line of text and realize that 0 cost draw can exist, should make some alarm bells go off. But I think the context of not having the exhausting things are just kind of different, right? On Defect, you just don't have the ability to exhaust down your entire deck as easily as the other characters. So this sort of thing is not going to break the game as much as something like Cloud. Okay. Scavenge, 1 energy, exhaust a card, next turn gain 2 energy. This is basically changed recycle. And this is what I mean. This card is worse than it was in Spire 1. In Spire 1, this would basically immediately give you energy, so you could create energy that turn and keep going. This sets you up energy next turn. It's a little clunky. It's kind of hard to pick, like compared to something like alignment on regens that retains and gives energy as well. Exhausting a card without having some other effect like giving draw or something, this is really do nothing the turn it's played. And how often do you really want to do that? I think this is like C tier. It feels really, really hard to enter the deck. I think if you know you want to go for some infinite thing, of course it's like target exhaust, it's going to be good, but you kind of already need to have the pieces in your deck that are pointing to that direction to want to basically try to pick this. In previous Spire, you could sometimes speculate this, and it's something like Snecko also would be very strong. That just makes it get inside the deck, and Meteor Strike goes infinite, but it feels like in this game that rarely ever happens. And yeah, I just don't really like it. Okay. Scrape. Deals 7 damage, draw 4 cards. Discard all cards drawn this way do not cost 0. In Spire 1, this is a really bad card, and unfortunately, it's still really bad here. Imagine a scenario where you're trying to draw into your defrag, or trying to draw into your Echo form, and you scrape it away, and now you're an entire deck cycle behind on trying to play that card. It oftentimes will rot in your hand because you simply cannot play it. I think you can do fun things with it. I've literally had Scrape Infinites before, but it is insanely awkward to actually have this get into the deck. I think it's just going straight into D tier. I don't think you pick this as an early card. You would only pick it after you have a lot of zero cost in the deck. We already talked about how that just doesn't happen. You don't want to build a deck with a lot of zero cost cards until you have payoff, and you cannot click scrape first, so you can't add the zero cost cards afterwards. You can't click all the zero cost cards to put scrape in the deck. It's a complete paradox. That's about it. Okay. Sometimes it will enter the deck just because you know exactly what you need to be doing and drawing zero cost cards, and you can maybe go infinite. I will say that, but we can put it at the top of D. It can do something, but it's just really not good. Okay, Shadow Shield, 2 energy, gain 11 block, channel 1 dark. Wow, that's a really good effect. Block 11 is very solid. Dark Orb is very solid. Doing these things together while you give your block, or you let your Dark Orb cook while you're blocking, and increase in damage over time. Very, very good. Very strong block card early game especially, and has extra utility with like killing bosses in the end game. It feels very easy to play this almost always. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna keep moving it up, honestly. Every time I like look at what's above it, I feel like it just deserves to bump up. That block number is just really good. Defect blocking 11 is, you know, pretty solid on this character that just takes some time to get set up often. Shatter. 1 energy, deal 11 damage to all enemies, evoke all your orbs. This is a new card that is quite interesting. Evoking all your orbs can sometimes be an upside, sometimes a downside, but I think very often in this game it's easier to replace orbs, and also you care less about having all your orbs stay around. So having 11 AoE damage in early game can be quite good. That being said, glass orbs exist. So AoE is sometimes already met, like the requirement for AoE is already met, and you don't really need this anymore. I think this just goes into like top of B maybe. I think I'm gonna lower Meteor Strike. I honestly feel like this is just not gonna happen very often. But Shatter, just a really, really nice card to have in the early game. Outside of that, sometimes you're just not gonna want it. But again, evoking all your orbs can just block. It doesn't just get rid of them, it does evoke them. Maybe honestly I can throw this into A tier. Yeah, it's a cool card. I like this design. I think it's interesting, and having a bunch of orbs stick around that have like 8 focus just doesn't happen anymore right now, because of the Defect being changed to rare. So Shatter more often than not will actually, you know, be a positive. Evoking orbs is better the lower your focus is, and having them sit around is better the higher your focus is. So if you have like a lot of like hot fixes or something that you're drawing into, maybe you don't want to take this thing, but you can also like increase the focus of them then evoke. It's weird. It depends on how often you can replace the orbs, really. So this is going to be one of those cards that sometimes is really good, sometimes really bad, but I think the average case is usually pretty good. Okay, Signal Boost. The next power you play is played in additional time exhaust. This is essentially Amplify from the first game, except it does not have a this turn limitation on it, so it's a much better card. It also exhausts to get out of the way. I do, however, think that a lot of powers don't need to be doubled as much in this game as in Spire 1. There are less defrags floating around. So I don't think context-wise that you really need the top end as much as you did in Spire 1. You're not as desperate to overscale, and sometimes this just bricks you. If you have like one key card you're trying to amplify, that makes a lot of sense to pick. Let's go ahead and throw this into bottom of B tier. I think it does sometimes enter the deck, maybe C tier. I think it's just a little too situational, maybe. A lot of these powers, you can look at them and understand why maybe you don't want to be doubling them. It just doesn't seem necessary. Some of them would be quite nice, so it just really depends on what's in your deck. That is where C tier lands. Sometimes these are exceptionally good cards, but very often they are not, which is why they're here. Okay. Skim, 1 energy, draw 3 cards. Defect, again, cares a lot about drawing into powers to set them up. Cares a lot about drawing into the zero cost hotfixes now and having draw consistency in future cycles. In the old game, Skim was not always readily available to click in early game. I think that's way less true in this game. You can sort of just click this, and it's going to perform, especially the second you have any sort of zero cost card that you're trying to cycle. This is one of the ways that zero cost cards end up getting in the deck, and hotfix is just clicked on sight anyways, so really, really nice. It means you brick less often on turn 1. Also, Defect has one of the easiest ways to make energy gen at common with turbo, so that can be quite good as well. I do think the other characters, you know, kind of have burst energy gen more now, but that doesn't mean Defect is bad at it. He's still quite decent at it. Having common energy generation that you do click pretty often is just going to mean that Skim is going to be strong. Okay, Smokestack. Whenever you create a status, deal 5 damage to all enemies. Really awkward card. Again, how often do I want to be doing this? It's really strange. Like, if you are making a bunch of statuses, then it's going to end up in the deck, I guess. But how do you get to the point where your deck wants to make a lot of statuses? I don't know. It's going in C tier. Obviously, if you are doing that, it's going to be really good. Again, C is basically just situational tier. Yeah, I don't know the exact sequence of things that would need to happen for you to want to have a deck that makes a ton of statuses. So it's just kind of strange. Okay. Spinner, 1 energy. At the start of your turn, channel 1 glass. Kind of interesting. Just channeling orbs every turn is pretty good. And early game, this is going to be pretty solid damage for you. It helps evoke the glass orbs that you are making, but I don't think it's like an exceptionally strong card necessarily. AoE you kind of want like immediately rather than delayed. So that probably bumps it down a little bit in evaluation for me. I would say it's probably like top of C or bottom of B. Let's like throw it with like Hyper Beam, I guess. I really don't think it's going to be like an exceptional card almost ever, but early game it will perform, and that sometimes is like good enough, you know? Okay. Stack event only, not gonna look at that. Storm, whenever you play a power, channel 1 lightning. I mean, Inspire 1, you could often pop off with this with like Heat Sinks and Mummy Hand. Heat Sinks is not in this game, which was a power that draws when you play powers, so it's a little harder to get an excess amount of draw to be able to go in with Storm. It was already not super great. There are things that do stuff with lightning orb generation, but it feels harder to pick than just slamming a bunch of frost cards into your deck. Making a bunch of lightning is generally just kind of a weaker thing. So let's throw this into bottom of C. I can definitely imagine scenarios where you want to pick it, but it seems incredibly situational. Okay, let's bump Refract up a little bit, but it's definitely not good. Okay. Subroutine. Whenever you play a power, gain 1 energy. This cheats a lot of energy, can combo with draw. I think it's a very, very solid card, but I don't think it's like insane. If you have like multiple copies of it or whatever, I guess you can make energy. This upgrades, I think, to cost 0. So sort of turns into pseudo Mummy Hand and lets you just play all your draw cards and slam all your powers. Definitely does something. But again, I think power spam in this game just doesn't happen quite as often. So probably top of B, maybe middle pack. That feels right. Yeah, it feels kind of unnecessary a lot of time. It's harder to pick than something like double energy that just generates energy you can use on anything. This is basically energy that's to only use on powers, essentially. Just the way it functionally works. But it's just not like insane without heat sinks. If you have heat sinks subroutine in the game, that would be an insane combo, and you can just draw your whole deck, play all the stuff for free. But again, less powers to play. I'm not really picking 8 defrags like I was in the last game. I'm just not going to have that. If you do, congrats, you probably already won anyways. So you just don't really need it. Okay. Sunder, deal 24 damage if this kills an enemy, gain 3 energy. It's still a crazy card from the first game. Pseudo AoE because it basically lets you kill something and refund the energy. And in AoE fights, the total HP numbers are small, so this can often just one-shot. This is just going into A tier. I don't think it's like as needed as it was in Spire 1 because you have other access to AoE, but it does combo nicely with like a glass orb to like kill the eels in Act 1. Like if you have a glass orb, you evoke it, and you play Sunder, something dies. So it is often read just 0 energy, deal 24, which is pretty cool. But yeah, not like an incredibly crazy card in this game, just does the thing it tries to do and is really good in hallways, falls off in bosses. You can echo form this for a lot of damage, but very often like Beam Cell is not really in the deck anymore, and that was like a main way to scale its damage. But yeah, not a ton to talk about. It's just like a big chunky card. Okay, super critical, 0 energy, gain 4 energy, exhaust. This is a lot of acceleration. Gaining 4 energy lets you play all your powers. I'm going to throw this in S tier. It is a rare card, so it's definitely not like one of the craziest ones. It doesn't win the fight alone, but that's a lot of energy to gen, unless you just chain all your draw together. If you're already slamming 2-3 cool-headeds every single run, you know, you're going to be playing cool-headed and cool-headed, and you're going to want to make energy somehow, and you can keep doing that with super critical. This, I think, is how energy gen on the other characters should have worked, but for some reason, Ironclad gets this that doesn't exhaust at uncommon. Don't get it. But that's obviously a crazy card. This is still a crazy card. Just lets you play all your stuff. If you have any sort of draw in the deck at all. Okay, Sweeping Beam, deal 6 damage to all enemies, draw 1 card. This is a very bad card in Spire 1, probably like bottom of C tier. In this game, AoE is needed a lot more, so I'm definitely not going to put it in C tier. Let's throw it somewhere in B. It doesn't fall off super hard because it will self-cycle. The effect is not massive, but 6 AoE is not nothing in this game. I think you actually do really need AoE damage. It upgrades to 9. Can play with some of the enchantments really nicely, like doubling it, for example, is great. adding extra damage to it's great because it hits all. It's just fine. I'm not going to put it over Ball Lightning. Let's not get too controversial here. We already had that in Spire 1. Yeah, it's just an okay card. I think it's not like insane, but if you need it early, it definitely enters the deck sometimes. Okay. Synchronize, 1 energy. Gain 2 focus this turn for each unique orb you have exhaust. The upgrade says not exhaust and it's reusable. Crazy card. Temp focus. Yeah, really good. This can make 4 to 6 to 8 focus a turn, which is just going to make all your orbs block everything, which is one of the main reasons why Capacitor is so good and why Modded is so good. Having a lot of orbs you can have sit around means that this sort of synergy works along with Compile Driver. So that is just going to be incredibly, incredibly strong and can be the only scaling you need in the entire boss fight. You just loop this card a bunch, you loop hot fixes, whatever. Anything that makes focus in this game is going to be strong. It's very similar to Spire 1. If the whole drafting plan is that you're going to have a lot of frost anyways because it's good early game and it becomes good late, temp focus is always just going to be a good thing. So yeah, S tier, easily. Okay, Synthesis. Deal 12 damage. The next power you play costs 0. Kind of a weird card, costs 2 energy. There's sometimes where this does cheat stuff out, but if it is cheating stuff out, you're not cheating out by a lot. Even if you're trying to play your Echo form, you're cheating energy by 1 and it has to line up. Notably, it doesn't say this turn, it just says next power, but I don't think the number on it is so high. I think if the damage number on this is higher, then it gets in the deck a lot more. But again, I just don't really feel like it enters the deck very often. Like, oftentimes it doesn't even cheat energy, especially after first cycle. And how often do you have a million powers in your deck in this game? It doesn't feel as frequent. So this is probably just like C. It's possible I'm sleeping on this card a little bit. I haven't had a scenario where it felt like I wanted that. So out of, 10, 15 hours of playing Defect or whatever, yeah, it just doesn't feel needed. Okay, Tempest, X cost, channel X Lightning. This was not a super crazy card in the first game, and really you would take it if you have like electrodynamics or like a lot of energy, or a lot of focus, and in this game it just doesn't feel like that happens very often. I don't think you need this. You have glass orbs now, so you don't even need to just like try to burst down enemies. Like, it feels very strange. I think there's better ways to deal boss damage if that's what you're trying to do that are less difficult to make happen. So probably just in C tier. It can do something. It can like do damage to elites early, but you often don't have a lot of energy in the early game to pump into this. Okay, Tesla Coil, 0 energy, deal 3 damage, trigger all lightning against the enemy. It's not a super horrible card. It can combo with like hotfix and stuff and temp focus to scale damage. It's relatively easy to pick early game because you usually have at least 1 lightning orb floating around, if not multiple ones. So I think as an early game damage card, it's pretty solid. If early game damage is sorted, then it probably doesn't enter very often. Can do some scaling stuff. It like sort of doubles your lightning damage that turn. But yeah, it's a little weird. Let's put this at like top of B. 0 energy damage cards, just early game are going to perform. And that's just what it is. Okay, Thunder. Whenever you evoke lightning, deal 6 damage to each enemy hit. This basically just gives you 6 focus on your lightning orbs. I don't feel like you really have a lot of runs where you're just making a ton of lightning. But you can have some where that's your damage solution. I think this is like kind of awkward to pick, but honestly is not bad boss killing ability either. Like, especially inside of Act 1, this will help you kill elites. You probably just can click it, but kind of awkward. Maybe like top of C. I definitely see a world where it does something, especially like Tempest or like multicast, but it doesn't feel like you increase the damage a lot. And it's like harder to evoke than it is to just let lightning sit around. I don't know, just kind of weird. And yeah, someone mentioned Voltaic. This is one of the cards it actually combos with. Channel Lightning, equal to lightning, already channeled this combat, exhaust. The upgrade makes it not exhaust, at 2 energy. Feels a little strange to me. I don't know how often I really am just like making a billion lightning, but I think if you have some small deck thing and you can just Voltaic, it goes exponential. So like you play Voltaic and to play Voltaic, and obviously you're just doubling it every time. Which increases damage really quickly. So we already kind of know on other characters how something like Hang on Necromancer, a Necrobinder, can like exponentially scale to kill bosses. So if you're really good in the hallways and just need to kill bosses, this is boss damage. We can put this in B tier. It definitely will kill bosses. That's its purpose. It's not going to perform very much in hallways, but if you are having trouble dealing enough scaling damage, your deck's probably small anyways, and you can sort of just let this be the way you kill the boss. Yeah, it's basically just better Thunderstrike than Inspire 1, and can combo with other stuff. But yeah, it's a little weird. Like, it's hard to justify picking early, but top of B is not a bad placement, I don't think. Maybe we throw this into... I don't know. I think Dark Orbs are like the main way you're probably killing bosses in this game. If you don't have a Dark Orb, then this is like what you pick to do that. So maybe just like bottom of A. Sure. Okay. Trash to Treasure. Whenever you create a status card, channel 1 random orb. Really weird. I don't really want random orbs. I think this can pop off, but again, how often do you really generate status cards? Not very often. So this in the bottom of C. If status archetype gets better, or you end up with decks that play a bunch of statuses more often, I can definitely see it going up. It just doesn't feel like that happens very often right now. Again, if they nerf stuff, maybe it happens, or if the context of the game changes and we need to start picking status, then sure. I think Defect is maybe the character that's the least explored, in terms of like, you know, we have a very consistent strategy, but it's very possible that we need to pick status stuff like 1 every 20 runs or something to win that run. The meta would need to progress quite a bit for us to know, I think, how good this actually is, but I don't think it will move from C. It's just possible I'm underrating it in the runs that you need to pick those things. I just think for the average run, this never enters the deck. If you are just trying to win relatively consistently and not literally win every single run, you can probably largely ignore that entire archetype. It is fun, but I don't think it's going to be like the highest win rate, especially for newer players trying to just like get a grasp on the game. If you just understand the main idea of I make Frost focus and I block the enemy and they will die to some Dark Orb, then that is probably going to get you a lot further than trying to sometimes win a run with this that maybe it will do something. But yeah, it's just kind of awkward. Status gen in this game is just, you know, a bad thing to have most of the time until you have the combo pieces, but it just doesn't enter the deck. Turbo, 0 energy, gain 2 energy, add a void into your discard pile. Okay, this void does self-exhaust. And energy is quite good in this game still. I'm going to throw this into A tier. This would be something that bridges you into status cards. So if you have expensive powers to play, if you have expensive cards to play in general, it is something you will click on. If you have machine learning, you can click on Turbo. Card gen is something that, you know, like Hello World or whatever, from the events, this was something that Turbo would be picked alongside it because you always draw 1 extra card and then the energy will play. You just want to make sure that the energy will actually do something. If you have a lot of cool headeds, Turbo can get in the deck. If you have something expensive that you're trying to put into play, like an Echo Form, I'm going to keep using that example, but it's one of the big ones. If you have an Echo Form that you want to put into play, if you have Sunder that you want to play after you play some other damage card to get the enemy into lethal range, that can do it. If you have a creative AI, etc. There's a few things on this character that are just really expensive, and if you have that and a Turbo, you're gonna be able to play that and also do block and other things on that turn. So yeah, energy gen, I think everyone knows how good energy is, but don't overpick it is my point. It can be a detriment to just draw a fistful of energy cards and have nothing to do with them, so you need to balance that a little bit. Okay, Uproar, 2 energy, deal 5 damage twice, play a random attack from your draw pile. Kind of weird. I can see how this goes infinite, if you can discount this energy cost or something, but really, really strange. I don't think I often want to play random cards. I don't really know how this gets into the deck because it's basically energy cheat, but a random attack is very often a strike in the early game. So this sort of reads like get a strike out of your draw pile, deal 16 damage for 2 energy, which is like fine, but I feel like there's a lot of cards that will just draw instead for a very similar rate and gives you more options to do instead of doing that. Yeah, Uproar is just kind of strange. I think this like goes into C. It's just a really weird card. I don't think I'd ever pick this even early game for damage unless I was super, super desperate, and that's about it. Okay, White Noise, 1 energy, add a random power into your hand. It's free to play this turn, exhaust. I think the need for having random powers in this game is just less. You are less desperate to find scaling from random powers. White Noise was already not an insane card in the last game. But it can do something. There's relics that interact with like playing a skill attack power in the same turn when this is a skill and a power together. It upgrades to cost 0. That's about it. It's not an exceptional card. Sometimes if you're super desperate, you can click it. It can just randomly print an Echo Form or a defrag. So this is mostly a desperation pick and not something you want to be adding into the deck because it's good value or something. I think the value of the average power, if you get something like Smokestack, just isn't there. There's a lot of powers that just don't do anything unless you're doing something very specific, and that's kind of how Spire 1 was as well, but I think it's even worse in this game. It feels like a lot of these powers just aren't very needed. Or like something like Subroutine, where you need other powers in the deck to make any use of it. There's a lot of just, I get nothing for playing this power kind of vibe. So just not worth really speculating on, again, unless you are incredibly desperate. And I believe that is all of it. These are just base cards down here. So yeah. Overall thoughts on Defect. I think this character is better designed than Inspire 1. I just think the game doesn't ask the questions needed to make Defect punishable. So right now he just feels kind of overtuned. It feels like you can sort of do the exact same thing from Spire 1, which doesn't feel great to me. Like, I think my main hope going into Spire 2 was that Defect would feel a lot different than Spire 1. Doesn't really seem like that happened. I think you're largely playing the same. You have more stuff in the early game to make you die to random BS less, but that's about all it is. I think Defect just got an easier early game, and doesn't have the end game that would actually challenge him in the way that the Heart did and the Spear and Shield did in Spire 1. So maybe when Act 4 gets introduced, we will know better about how this whole kit works, and there are going to be more challenges for Defect. But yeah, it's just not as difficult, I think, to play as Defect in Spire 1. There's less things asked of you. So I think Defect overall is in a pretty okay spot. I think this is probably the second best designed character after Necrobinder for me currently. But it does feel like I sort of know what to do more often than not. I think the other archetypes on this character just don't really do very much. That was kind of similar to Spire 1. Like, you really didn't pick the zero cost package ever. The status gen package didn't really exist, but there was a lot of things you just sort of never went into in Spire 1 Defect. And it feels pretty similar here. It feels like there's one like primary thing of like Frost Focus, which is the exact same thing that was good in the first game. So it's kind of feeling samey to me, even though I haven't played this game for nearly as many hours as Spire 1. But after like 1,000 or 2,000 hours of Defect in Spire 1, I'm feeling like it's pretty much playing the exact same, and I'm doing the same things. Not a huge fan of that, but overall, I can't complain too much. I think new players playing this character are going to have a good time. Defect was a fan favorite in Spire 1, I think, for not top players. I think a lot of top players were pretty sick of Defect and the ways that he died. It feels like they did remove some of those ways that he died, but also kind of just removed ways that he died overall, not even just specific ones. He just doesn't really die very easily unless you misplay. Again, I think with a good play, this character probably wins almost every run. And that is a weird place to be in. Having a strong Act 1 in this game feels like a kind of a cheat code, because the other acts don't really test you in the same way. If you have a strong Act 1, you sort of breeze through the rest of the game. The Ancient Moons are just way too powerful. And yeah, that's about it. Okay, so I think that's it for the YouTube video. Thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments or come to stream whenever I'm live, which will be most days. I am going to be gone for the weekend to play at South by Southwest. So if you happen to be in Texas, feel free to go to that show. And I can post details in Discord or whatever. I will hopefully have some videos to post while I am gone. And then in the meantime, as soon as I get back, we'll start working on other stuff. I think this is the last tier list, I believe, for characters, but we still have a lot of things to talk about. Niao bonuses, pathing, just sort of general guides about how to play the game, I think are probably what's up next, but please let me know what you want to see. Okay, I will see you all in the next one.